.185?
0.185, yep. Do you know what the DOT limit is for driving in the state of North Dakota is? It's a .08. So you're over double the limit right now to drive.
In the early hours of January 23, 2020, a University of North Dakota police officer in Grand Forks observed a vehicle pulling out of an apartment complex directly in front of his patrol car. What followed was a routine DUI stop that ended with a breath test result more than double the legal limit, an emotional plea from a college athlete, and a final outcome that raises questions about how this case was ultimately resolved. According to the original footage's narration, the officer observed the driver swerving within the lane, crossing the center line, and turning through an intersection from a lane designated for vehicles traveling straight. After the vehicle nearly collided with a fully loaded dump truck at the next intersection, the officer initiated a traffic stop. Under Terry v. Ohio, an officer needs only reasonable suspicion that a traffic violation has occurred to justify a stop. Each of these observations independently would satisfy that standard. The officer approaches and begins a standard records check, asking for license, registration, and insurance. The driver, a college student later identified as Jackson, responds politely and hands over the requested documents. At this stage, the encounter still resembles an ordinary traffic stop, but the officer has already formed an independent basis to extend it. Jackson offers an explanation for the driving the officer observed. Icy roads and front tires he describes as badly worn. The officer notes that Jackson's brake lights stayed illuminated continuously rather than flickering, which he says is inconsistent with someone repeatedly pumping the brakes to control a skid. This detail becomes part of the officer's developing assessment, though at this point it remains only one factor among several. The officer asks routine questions about where Jackson and his passenger are coming from and where they're headed, standard information gathering that helps establish a timeline and context for the stop. The officer then explains, on camera, every observation that led to the stop, weaving back and forth, a wide turn, nearly running a red light, an improper turn from a straight-only lane, and now, the smell of alcohol coming from inside the vehicle. Documenting these factors verbally and on camera creates a clear record. If this stop is ever challenged in court, the officer's contemporaneous explanation, rather than a reconstruction made after the fact, will carry significant weight. Asked directly how much he's had to drink, Jackson's response is difficult to make out on the recording. Combined with the driving pattern and the odor the officer has described, this exchange gives the officer sufficient grounds to extend the stop into a DUI investigation. The officer asks Jackson to step out of the car. Under Pennsylvania v. Mimms, an officer conducting a lawful traffic stop may order occupants out of the vehicle without any additional justification. The safety benefit to the officer outweighs the minor extra intrusion on the driver. This is one of the most well-established rules in traffic stop law and applies regardless of whether the officer suspects DUI. Before beginning any testing, the officer asks whether Jackson is carrying any weapons and performs a brief pat-down. This is a routine officer safety step anytime a subject is going to be positioned away from the vehicle and asked to perform physical tasks. Jackson complies without objection. The officer begins the first of 3 standardized field sobriety tests developed under guidelines from the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. The horizontal gaze nystagmus test, which checks for an involuntary jerking of the eyes that becomes more pronounced with alcohol impairment. Notice the officer dims his flashlight and waits for a passing truck before starting. Controlling the testing environment is part of administering this test correctly. The second test is the walk and turn 9 heel-to-toe steps along an imaginary line, a specific turning procedure, and 9 steps back, all while counting aloud and watching the feet. The officer gives lengthy, detailed instructions. This thoroughness matters because part of what the test measures is the subject's ability to follow multi-step verbal instructions while maintaining balance. Jackson performs the test as instructed. Field sobriety tests are not pass-fail in a strict sense. Officers are trained to look for a specific number of standardized, clues of impairment across each test, and the overall pattern across all 3 tests informs the officer's decision, rather than any single misstep. The final standardized test is the one-leg stand, raising 1 foot approximately 6 inches off the ground and counting aloud for 30 seconds. The officer stops the count at around 7 seconds short of the full 30, based on what he observes. Stopping early is itself a documented clue under the standardized scoring criteria for this test. Based on the driving pattern, the odor of alcohol, and the results of the field sobriety tests, the officer extends the stop further, moving the investigation to the back seat of the patrol vehicle, out of the cold. At this point, Jackson is not yet under arrest, but the investigation is clearly progressing toward a request for a breath sample. Before requesting a breath sample, the officer reads North Dakota's implied consent advisory in full, as required under North Dakota Century Code Section 3920.01. The advisory informs Jackson that state law requires him to take the screening test, and that refusal can result in a license revocation of between 180 days and 3 years. After confirming Jackson understands, the officer asks for his consent to a breath sample, which Jackson gives. During a mouth check before the breath test, the officer finds a coin in Jackson's mouth. He explains, correctly, that this is a long-standing myth. A coin in the mouth has no effect on a breath alcohol reading, but notes that procedure still requires a fresh 3-minute observation period before testing can proceed. This moment is included because it's a common misconception, and the officer's calm, factual correction is itself a small piece of public education. During the mandatory waiting period, Jackson becomes increasingly distressed, repeatedly explaining how hard he's worked to earn his position on the university's golf team and asking the officer for leniency. The officer does not respond to these appeals directly, instead redirecting to the procedural steps that remain. These statements are voluntary and unprompted. They were not made in response to police questioning. So Miranda protections, which apply to custodial interrogation, are not implicated by their being recorded here.
It's been 3 minutes, so we'll do this now. Just don't try to mess with it again like you just tried with the penny, okay?
I'm scared, that's why.
I'll be honest with you, I've never seen anybody actually try the penny thing before. That is a new one.
I'm scared, that's why.
You want to light me? Yep. Alright, so what I'm going to have you do is wrap your lips around this tube, make a nice airtight seal, and blow strong into here until I tell you to stop, okay? So deep breath in, and blow hard. Harder, harder, harder. Go, 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 go. Okay, good. And it's just got to think like any other computer, and I'll let you know what it says. You're over 21 low, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. You see what that says?
0.185?
0.185, yeah. Do you know what the DOT limit is for driving in the state of North Dakota is? It's a 0.08. So you're over double the limit right now to drive.
Can you just bring me home, please?
No, we're past that.
Out.
You were a danger to yourself on the road the way you were driving also. So, I'll tell you what.
Please help.
I am going to be placing you under arrest for driving under the influence, okay? You are under arrest for DUI right now. Okay?
My wife's room.
Okay. Since you are under arrest, I am going to let you know what your rights are before I continue. You do have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. You have the right to talk to a lawyer and have one present with you while you're being questioned. And if you cannot afford to hire a lawyer, one would be appointed to represent you before any questioning if you wish. Do you understand your rights?
The footage's own closing narration states that Jackson submitted to a formal breath test at the station, which measured 0.182%. He was charged with driving under the influence, a charge later reduced to reckless driving. He was fined $150, with total costs of $400, including fees, paid in full. He received no jail time. 360 days of unsupervised probation, 50 hours of community service, and 8 points on his North Dakota driver's license out of a possible 12. The officer in this stop receives a grade of A-. The initial stop was supported by multiple independently sufficient observations: lane departures, an improper turn, and a near collision, any one of which would justify a Terry stop on its own. The decision to order Jackson out of the vehicle for field sobriety testing was squarely authorized under Pennsylvania v. Mimms. The implied consent advisory was read in full and accurately, and Miranda warnings were given promptly upon arrest. The officer also correctly and calmly corrected a common myth about coins and breathalyzers, rather than treating it as an attempted obstruction. The reason this falls short of a perfect score is pacing and tone during the waiting period when Jackson became emotionally distressed. A brief acknowledgement of his stress, even without altering the procedure, may have helped de-escalate the tension visible in the footage without compromising the investigation in any way. Jackson receives a grade of C+. On the positive side, he was cooperative throughout. He provided his documents without resistance, did not argue with the officer's account of the driving pattern, and complied with every instruction during testing and the arrest itself. He also stopped driving and pulled over promptly when signaled, despite his clear impairment. However, his decision to drive at all with a blood alcohol concentration more than double the legal limit created the exact danger the officer described: a near collision with a loaded dump truck, moments before the stop. Before we go, here are a few takeaways from this case. 1. Officers can lawfully order you out of your vehicle during any traffic stop. This isn't unique to DUI investigations, and there's no legal basis to refuse. 2. The coin-in-the-mouth trick doesn't affect a breathalyzer reading. It's a myth, and officers know it's a myth. 3. North Dakota's implied consent law means refusing a breath test after a lawful DUI arrest carries its own license consequences, separate from the DUI charge itself. 4. Anything you say voluntarily during a stop, including statements made under stress, can become part of the record. Staying calm and limiting unprompted statements protects you more than pleading does. Let us know if there is an interaction or legal topic that you would like us to discuss in the comments below. If you found this analysis useful, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss our next case breakdown. Thank you for watching